Hi, and welcome to another In Focus on Whitewater Community Television's WGTV Channel 11. I'm Eric Marsh, Executive Director of Whitewater Community Television. Thank you very much for joining me for this week's conversation. We're going to find out a little bit about Future Achievers, a not-for-profit organization that is working with some of our youth. Carl Rhinehart, a name that some people know, some people don't, involved with that. Carl, thank you very much for taking the time to talk to me.
Oh, not a problem, Eric. I appreciate you having me and giving me this opportunity.
Glad to do it. Let's start by finding out a little bit about you.
Sure.
Some people know you, have worked with you. This is the first time some people are hearing about you. So give us a little background. Are you native to Wayne County? And if not, what brought you here?
Yeah. So I am originally from Muncie, Indiana. So just up the road a little ways. And Earlham College brought me here. I
I hear that
graduated.
a lot.
Yeah. Graduated from Muncie Central. So I'm a proud Bearcat. And then came to Earlham.
You know the Red Devils are going,
Yeah. That's all right. That's all right. I root for them too. I've been here too long now. So I got to wear both hats.
Okay.
But yeah, I came here in '99 to go to Earlham College, studied business and nonprofit management at Earlham, graduated 2003. Pretty much stayed around ever since then. I did leave for a year and went out to El Paso, Texas, and coached football as a graduate assistant at the University of Texas, El Paso, under Mike Price there in about 2004. Stayed there for a year, realized what coaches really do, especially at that level, and decided to come back a little bit closer to home. I didn't want to go all the way back home, so I landed back here in Richmond, which has become a second home to me, and a lot of friends and mentors and special people here that I consider to be family live right here, and so it's a very comfortable place for me. So,
How long did you play football, and what did you play?
I've been playing football ever since seventh grade. And so, yeah, played offense and defensive line primarily. I've always been a big guy, big kid. So the line is where I pretty much had to stay. At Earlham, I played defense, defensive tackle, defensive end.
Mhm. What was it about not-for-profit work that kind of attracted you to it? You were talking about your major, and it was business and not-for-profit work. What is it about not-for-profit work that attracted you?
I think it's just about serving others. I mean, I feel like I just in everything that I've done, coming up over the years, whether it's been my early childhood all the way up through my professional career as an adult. I mean, I've been interested in serving and working with others. Youth is a passion of mine as well. I come from a large family, about 15, 16. I kind of lost count, I think, nieces and nephews that I came up around, as well. And so I've always enjoyed working with youth. And so I think just everything by the grace of God just fell in line for me and lined up perfectly for me to get the education that I needed, the training that I needed, the experiences that I needed to now be in the position that I am now and have the opportunities that I have now, but still learning and still growing and still trying to achieve.
Talk about some of those opportunities that you've been able to find here that have really kind of helped lead you to your passion. You've worked with a couple of different organizations while you're here.
Yeah, I mean, I've worked at Chase Bank for several years, about 5 years. Here in town, I worked at just I think every branch here in town when they had them all. Of course, they've closed down one or two since then, but worked in insurance as well too. Sold insurance for a little bit of time, but then around that time, interestingly enough, before that and then after my time in banking and finance, I worked in mental health. So once I came back to Richmond from Texas, I was able to get a position in recreation at the state hospital. landed a summer internship position that then grew into a full-time position. Then I worked in management there as well. That gave me, I think, really a great opportunity to really learn and start to understand youth, and definitely youth from hard places, youth that have experienced trauma in their life, and youth that are in a difficult spot, and kind of understanding how they think and what they need to help them to be successful. And I think it just kind of, catapulted from there. I like to think too that where I'm at and what I'm doing currently with Future Achievers, it's really taken everything, all of my training, and put it together. The reason why, one of the reasons we started the organization was around financial literacy. And of course, being at the bank, I was able to see, people with money. And then I compared that to my bank account and asked myself, what am I doing wrong? And then the other thing was I met a lot of youth that came in that didn't know anything about banking. They didn't have accounts. They came in because they had a check, and their grandma or their family member takes it normally to the tobacco store or to the liquor store and cashes it. And they weren't able to do that this time. So they thought, well, hey, I'll just bring it into the bank and see what I can do with it. And so I'm thinking, wow, okay, are there others, with this same lack of knowledge, I guess. And so it then pushed, myself and then two other folks, Erica Butler and Rachel Ulrich, to want to create, this program to be able to help and provide some education for young people.
You're watching In Focus on Whitewater Community Television's WGTV Channel 11. We're speaking with Carl Rhinehart, who is telling us at this moment about Future Achievers. Talk about that organization. Talk about how it got started. Is this just a local organization that you started? Is this a local branch of a more national organization? And really, what are you hoping to achieve with it?
Yeah. So Future Achievers was started in 2012. And so we came out of the Institute for Creative Leadership. Some people might know that program. Mary Jo Clark and Pat Heine, that opportunity they provide to folks in the community to come and learn leadership skills. Well, our final project is to then create a service project for the community. And myself, Erica Butler, and Rachel Ulrich, who actually at the time was a high school student. And she was special because from what I had heard, typically they didn't have high school students in that program. It was just for adults, professionals. And so she must have displayed something special, to them, and for them to allow her to be a part of that program. And most definitely so, I would say. And so she was in our group, and we linked up, the three of us, and we started to ask ourselves, what do youth need to be successful? And talking with Rachel as well, asking her, hey, what are some of the things that you're getting in high school? What are some of the things that you're not getting that you feel like you need, as you get ready to kind of take this leap? And so pulling our experiences, and our conversations with youth and our own experiences together, we were able to come up with a financial literacy program at the time. And we partnered at that time with Townsend Community Center over on the north side of town, worked with their staff and their youth in that building, and offered this program to their students, where the young people would come in, and we would sit down and we would talk about issues of finance with them. So we would talk about banking and the different types of accounts, checking versus savings, and interest and credit and mortgages and car loans and so on and so forth. And we really work to try to bring it to their level. And it's kind of, we're trying to accomplish two things at the same time. We're trying to make it make sense for you right now and give you some things that can be of benefit to you now. But we're also trying to help you give a window to you of what the future is going to look like. So you can start, or so they can start, putting these skills to work now, in hopes that, in a few years down the line, they're ahead of the game because of the knowledge that they've received at this time. So that went really well, and so well to the point that I'm like, well, hey, we got to do more. Like, we can't just offer this once, and then stop here. And so from there, started doing some research, started putting things together, and said, hey, how can we form a nonprofit organization, and keep this thing going. In the meantime, too, we also thought, what are some other skills? What are some other information that young people need to have, again, to help them be successful adults and to help them make that leap from once a high school student, teenager, to now all of a sudden I'm in the real world and I'm supposed to be grown, and I got to manage all these things. And so we came up with a broader list. And so we have personal finance. We also offer a webinar or course on college preparation, job readiness, giving back to the community and civic engagement is in one. And then the last one is health and wellness. And so what we were able to do from there is then to create this organization that we now call Future Achievers, and offer this programming to youth. We are a 501c3, so we have that status. We're fully recognized as a nonprofit. We are organized here in Richmond, Indiana, but we are willing to travel. And I think our programming and the information that we want to share will travel anywhere and be applicable anywhere on the globe. And so we also, look to form partnerships with other organizations, and to again, be able to help other communities like we're trying to help ours, and to share the information that we have with other youth that are out there.
When you say youth, talk about how adaptable this program is for various ages, or is it really designed for teenagers, 13 to 17?
Yeah, I like that you said that. And definitely Future Achievers wants to be adaptable. We want to be flexible to not only meet the changing needs of youth, but that changing demographic, as well too. And so we say teens a lot. I say teens a lot, and that's really where we started. But learning as we continue to talk, as the calendar keeps moving forward, this information, really, we got to start at a younger and younger level, to start, imparting this knowledge onto young people, onto our youth, so that way they come up with it. And so every year that they age, it is just a refresher and a reinforcement of the foundation that was laid previously. So our programming is very much adaptable, to the youth, no matter what age. But we do focus, a lot of our programming is kind of geared towards that, seventh grade, I would say, all the way up through 12th grade. Other conversations I've had as well too are talking about transitional age youth. And so you're talking now about that 18-year-old, 19-year-old who's graduated high school, maybe to about 23, 25 years old. Because I think people are finding, well, one, I mean, you got some adults probably out there who are saying, I'm looking at this kid and they're still in my house, right? I did my job. You're 18, 19, 20 years old. Yeah, you graduated. Why are you still looking at me? And so again, I mean, I think that just speaks to, we've got youth out here that still have some questions, that maybe didn't find their way, or maybe hit a rough patch in life and kind of need a reset. And so we want to be here for them. That's, who we're here for. And in addition to, I think, again, this information crosses any demographic. And so it's not just for poor people. It's not just for bad kids. I mean, this information is for any child who may need it, or who may not have it, or otherwise have access to it. I remember some years back, we did we actually broke these out. And this is at a time, of course, when we were able to meet face to face. We took each one of the workshops and we had a longer, more intense workshop in the summer. And so we did job readiness, where students were they came down to the Innovation Center downtown. We brought in a resume writing expert, Crystal Marshall from Chicago, Illinois. She's an Earlham graduate as well too. And she instructed our young people on, hey, this is what you need to be thinking of as you get ready to enter the workforce. These are the different types of resumes. We sat down and helped youth create resumes based upon the information they had at the time. and based upon jobs that they felt like they were going to go after in the future. And so every student that participated walked away with a new resume. We taught them how to dress for success. We did mock interviews, with them as well. And so there was just, a lot of information we were able to cover in that session. And we had a parent who reached out to me and she said, hey, you know what? My kid is a good kid. My kid comes from a 2-parent home, my husband and I, and we're teaching these things to our son. But the problem is, I don't think he's listening. I don't think he hears us because it's his parents talking. And so she said, hey, I just need somebody to tell him the same thing I've been telling him, in hopes that maybe he'll absorb it, because now it's coming from someone, outside the home. And so that's why she got her young person involved. So
you're watching In Focus on WGTV Channel 11, getting some information about future achievers. Carl Rhinehart, talk to me about how you make your connections with youth.
absolutely. And I think one of the things that we try to do is be real with young people and let them know, that we understand the situation that they're in and really where they're going to. And I remember too, and I have to reflect back a lot too, as a young person, I didn't want to hear what adults had to say. I didn't want to hear what my parents had to say. I felt like they were old, and that's, you guys did things old fashioned. And back in the day when you were a kid, it was totally different than the way, we grow up now, and so on and so forth. And so now I'm old. And so now I get to be in the position I put my parents in a few
Don't
years
you hate
ago.
it?
So, yeah.
Payback is rough, man.
Absolutely. But, again, I think for me, it goes back to the experience I had working with youth in residential services. And so I worked at, again, I said the state hospital. I worked at Wormley Youth and Family Treatment Center as well, too. And I'm talking, you dealing with some of the kids that have been through some of the most traumatic experiences, like I can't even imagine. And you're in an environment where you have to build, if you want to be successful, if you really want to help, you have to build trust with them. And you do that by being genuine. You do that by letting them know what time it is straight off the bat. And I remember working with some youth face to face in our workshops, and I told them, hey, how many, raise your hand if you were forced to be here. If the only reason why you're here is that your parents told you had to come here. And again, and for me, like, that would break the ice and let them know, okay, you get, and I say, hey, it's okay. That's okay if the only reason why you're here is because you were forced to be here. I'm just glad you're sitting in the seat. Now that you're here, open up your ears and allow yourself to hear some of the information that we're going to share with you. And it just might answer some questions for you. It just might help you. But the first step is just being there. And so I think, making things open and welcome for them as well, too. It has definitely been, successful for us in connecting on that real genuine level. I think as well too, again, I talk about building relationships and partnerships with other organizations, as we now are going out and pitching our programs and our offerings to the community. Again, I'm making that ask of our schools, of our youth serving organizations, to take a look at what we have to offer and to allow us to come in and talk with you and about working with, the youth that you serve, partnering with you, because I've learned, no one person has a monopoly on good ideas. No one person has a monopoly on information. No one organization can serve our community. It takes truly a village. And Future Achievers wants to be a part of that village. We want to be a part of that continuum of care. And we can only do that if we collaborate with one another and work together to provide the best that we can for our young people.
Getting an organization like this started and keeping it going always costs. Even as a not-for-profit, you still have expenses, you have overhead, you have things that you have to pay. Talk a little bit about how a program like this financially sustains itself and what it needs in the course of a year to actually maintain.
Yeah, well, I think one of the ways we sustain, I mean, it's through, a lot of prayers and a lot of blessings. We have been fortunate to have some key people along the way who have, sold into this organization, who believe in what we're doing in our mission, um, and have donated not only time but money as well, to be able to support us. I think too, being a small not for profit, I mean a startup, I guess I would say, especially kind of in 2012, initially when we started, and then getting to now, man, we've learned a lot. I've learned a lot, along the way. You do things on a very, very tight budget,
Mhm.
and you learn that budgeting, very, very quickly. Um, but I think we've been fortunate again to do a lot, with little, and the community has really supported us, as well too. There was a break between probably about 2013 and 14 till about 2018 that we had in programming and services, and that was just to, board members moving away, job changes with myself, and so flexibility in my schedule wasn't really there to be able to do what I had been doing before. And so, but now, well, around about 2018, 19, I'm looking and I'm saying, hey, you know what? We've put in a lot of time and energy into this. We've got this organization to where it is now. It's established on paper. Like we can't, and the need is still there. I mean, the need is still there, and is growing. And so we can't let this go. And so I said, hey, you know what? Let's reboot this thing. Let's Future Achievers 2.0. Here we go. Let's jump back out there. And since then, in 2019, I actually resigned from my full-time position with my employer at the time over the summer to be able to pursue this full-time, as well as established an LLC for myself, in which I'm doing similar work, working in the community with families and youth involved with DCS. And so that has freed up some time for me to be able to really focus in on future achievers, and to get us to a place where hopefully this organization is going to outlive me.
Where do you want it to go? What's the next step for this organization?
Well, man, I really feel like the sky is the limit, for future achievers. And so I try not to really put us into a box, or limit, where we can go with this. But I think, definitely the next step would be to get our youth involved, and to make sure that our youth are aware of our presence here, and of what we have to offer. And then, continue to grow our offerings, continue to pump out that information to young people, so that way we limit the number of questions that they have going into adulthood. That would be the goal. I think too, as we expand and as we form partnerships with others, I mean, there's opportunities. Man, I would love to be able to offer job shadowing opportunities, internship opportunities for young people, where they could actually go out and try on jobs. I mean, we get this question asked of us when we're kids and when we're in high school of, what do you want to be when you grow up? And it's like,
Mhm.
I didn't know. Really, it's all I knew was what I saw around me. And I had my family members. I mean, my family, I come from entrepreneurs, business owners. My grandparents owned a barbershop, but they were telling me, no, you're not going to work in a barbershop. It's too hard of a job, standing on your feet all day. You go get an education and go sit behind a desk. Well, that's great, but I didn't know what sitting behind a desk looked like, except for sitting behind a desk. I mean, that's as far as my knowledge went. It's funny. I mean, business nonprofit management is my degree from Earlham.
Mhm.
But if you were to ask me, and I can reflect back and think, when I was in college, you asked me what I wanted to do with that. So I didn't know. I wanted to manage people. I just want to tell people what to do. It's as far as I knew what that was. And then it was when I started to job search that, you know, employers were asking me, well, what type of manager do you want to be? Do you want to be a sales manager? Do you want to be a production manager? Do you want to be a this type of? And I had no idea there were those types of options. It was that broad. So again, I think providing young people at the high school level, even at the, again, we can tailor it to fit the middle school and even elementary a little bit, to kind of to try on some careers, try on some different jobs, so that they can have some real life experience as they continue to learn and grow and figure out who they are. They can remember that experience they had, that exposure, and then put those two things together and say, okay, yep, this is where I want to go. I think too, what's important when you're working with youth is to also try to instill this drive for them to continue to learn and continue to grow and continue to be better. Where you start should not be the same place that you end. So if you start in one position, in which we all have to pay our dues, we start from the ground up. And so you start in that entry level position, that's not where you really want to retire from. If you have that drive to do more, then you should go after that. And we should be nurturing that drive in our youth to go after those higher positions, taking on more responsibilities, doing different things that are going to push them and challenge them in new ways.
When you're working with youth, and you've mentioned working with some youth that have been through some pretty hard times that even you've said you have a hard time imagining. There are many in this community, probably many watching this show, who don't fully understand what it is you're talking about. Can you, obviously without giving away names,
Sure.
talk about some of the situations that more of our youth than we realize are going through?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think so what it is, if you were to look at a child who was in a residential facility, you would look at them and say, okay, I get it. Oh, that makes sense. I see what's going on there, quite possibly. I know that's what it was. I think for me, like, I expected to see behaviors out of kids that were quote unquote locked up, for lack of a better word. But when you start to see some of the same situations out of kids in our community, you're absolutely right. I mean, what we don't know is, it could be quite possible. My neighbor could be sitting over here in this house and I'm thinking they're doing great, and I wave at them in the morning and how you doing? I may have no idea that they don't have any food to eat at night, or that, I'll just put it out there and I apologize, but that my neighbor might be beating their child on a daily basis. These are some of the real types of things that are happening. I feel like we only get to really see it, again, once, that child is now removed and then put in a facility and then kind of put behind a glass, and then we can view them. And then it's like, oh, okay, now, you and you kids over here. No, it's widespread. It's infecting, our community. I've dealt with or worked with young people who have been abused, physically, emotionally, sexually. I think it is. I don't know the exact statistic, but I would assume that it's probably staggering. I know my time at Wernley, I was a manager of a girls adolescent treatment unit, and I would say it was fair to say probably 90, if not 95% of those young ladies, or maybe even more, had all been sexually abused at one point or time or another. Kids being neglected, not having food to eat, parents being on drugs, and some parents weren't. They were just neglectful. They just left them, would leave the kids in the house for days. I remember hearing a story about a child who, and we're talking, he was, probably infant, toddler age, but he was in a crib, and they said the way the parents did was they put the kids in the crib and they left them. They put bottles out on the floor, and if you wanted to eat, you had to go get it. DCS walked into the house, there was diapers piled up, in the trash cans overflowing. But these were the types of conditions that these kids, had grown up in. And now they're in a position, unfortunately, where I feel like, the circumstances of their upbringing has now kind of taken over them, and taught them some maladaptive skills. And so they're in a position where now they have to be, in a facility where they get, a lot of care and a lot of treatment in an intensive manner, to be able to help them overcome those challenges. But again, we have some of the same things right here in our own community. I remember I coached football here locally. I've coached at the college level and at the high school level. And I was shocked to realize that, I mean, we had guys, young people, young men on our football team at the high school that were homeless. I mean, I knew of a coach, something was going on with the kid and I could tell something was wrong. And I said, Coach, what's going on with him? You know, this was at a game. And the coach pulled me aside and said, hey, man, this kid's got no place to live. I mean, he's been sleeping in my basement for the last couple nights. And I said, what? Like, I just, in the kids, I mean, because he presented so well, he looked on the outside, he looked polished. I mean, hair groomed well, clothes were nice. I mean, he was a popular kid. People knew him. And so you would think, and there turned out to be more and more, situations like that where you just did not know what was going on when that bell rang and them doors closed and that kid jumped on that bus. And understanding that for me gave me a new appreciation for what these young people are up against and for what these young people are able to do. I went from blaming the student and blaming the parent too at the same time for the situations and the behaviors of this young person. To then now I look at them and I say, I'm just proud that you're here. I'm proud of you from getting to where you were at, didn't get any sleep last night because the home that you're living in is not safe. You didn't get any breakfast this morning because you didn't have parents that were able to get up and cook you anything or send you off with anything. And the fact that you are sitting here in this school now and you haven't torn somebody's head off is a great accomplishment. So I'm going to pause real quick and I'm not going to put any more pressure on you. And we just going to soak this up that you arrived, and I'm going to cut you some slack and then we'll go from there. And that's exactly some of the conversation that I've had with youth working in the schools as well, too, when I was in mental health. I mean, we had to have some of those real conversations. I mean, people got to understand, you'll get a kid that'll blow up. He'll throw a trash can or she'll cuss you out and start a fight. They'll throw a computer. But you got to ask yourself, why are they doing that? Nobody wants to do. These children don't want to behave like that, but there is just something that has gone on or that is going on that is just too difficult for them to handle. Some of our kids are stunted emotionally too. I mean, I've learned a lot just with my own kids. I've got a 1 and a 2-year-old, and I've studied them, and they've opened my eyes up to some things. And I'm like, aha, I get it now. My 1-year-old wants something and he can't get it. What does he do? He throws a fit. He cries. He screams. When he's upset, he hits. I don't know how he learned how to hit. I didn't teach him like that, but that must be some primitive, carnal, behavior that's just inherent in us, right? And so some of these kids, are in that same situation. Some situations are just so stressful that it takes them back to that place. And let's be honest, some of us adults are like that as well, too. I've been there myself. There's been some situations that have taken me to a place where I just, man, as my mama would say, act ignorant and act in a way that I know is not appropriate, but it just, because the stress has just overcome you and overwhelmed you and you're not equipped to handle that situation, you revert back to a very primitive way of dealing with it.
Thank you for that. I appreciate you being willing to share that, because I think if we don't talk about those things with people who have a chance to see, particularly our youth, our troubled youth who have been through a lot, it's hard to understand. So thank you. You're watching In Focus on WGTV Channel 11, having some time with Carl Rhinehart. Carl, one of the things that you're doing with future achievers is really passing on information. You talked about bringing someone in, teaching them how to do some resume work. I think one of the ways you're also doing this is having conversations with people so that you can show some of the youth, some other folks that have been successful, that have been out there and done some things. Talk about some of the conversations that you're having and how that started with you.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, this is our growth and we're only, at the tip of the iceberg here. But we've started a YouTube channel, on YouTube, just search Future Achievers. You'll see our blue logo that pops up. That's how you know you're in the right place. And yeah, we just started having some candid conversations, just like you and I are having, with some different people that I know, and have been around and maybe have watched or seen kind of come up, and who are doing some pretty amazing things. Um, I start off a lot of the conversations and I say, I think for me, at least, and a lot of times I go off of my experience first, right? But I think this would be applicable, to many people. Is that especially if you look at celebrities, we look at celebrities a lot of times, and we only get to see, or we look at somebody who's made it or who's successful, and a lot of times we see the finished, polished product. We see the person once they have arrived.
Hmm.
Um, a lot of times what we don't get to see, unless they make that available, they do an interview, or they talk about that and make time for that, is what it took to get them there, right? And so that's what I really want to capture with these conversations. I want to talk about, okay, what are you doing now? Where you going in the future? Man, what are some of the things you're focused on? But I also want to go back. Let's go back and let's talk about how you got to this place. Um, because for me, that's where the inspiration lies, right? Because I don't necessarily want to do things just like the next person. I don't want technically, necessarily what you have. I want what's out there for me. I want what God has for me. And so in order for me to find that, um, I need to know, sort of just give me kind of the blueprint, give me some tips and different things to kind of think about, talk to me about some of the challenges that you've overcome. So that way I can use that same information, but then use it to go out and find me and to figure me out, because we may not have the same experiences, but they might be similar. So there's definitely some things that I can learn. And I'll go back real quick. That's the same approach that I take in working with people, is that I cannot impose who I am and how I've done things and live my life up on you. I can't make you do what I've done. And if I try to, I'm wrong. What I need to do is help you be the best you that you can be. I can share with you some things that I've done and some things that have helped me, but the goal is you take what I give you and you apply it how you see fit to make you the best you. I talk about my why sometimes, and it's because I believe that everyone deserves the opportunity to be their best self, not be the best Carl, be the best you that you can be.
Who are some of the people that you've talked to, and how did you choose them as a subject for a conversation?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked, because I was revisiting a video that I did back in September, and that's of Robert Gunn Jr. He is the principal of W.E.B. Du Bois Academy in Louisville, Kentucky. A friend of mine, a colleague, a teammate from Earlham, played football with him, Hall of Famer over at Earlham. And I'm telling you, this was the first video that I did. This is what got me started doing this. And the reason why is, and so I've watched Robert, and he's been an inspiration to me for a long time. And I've seen some of the things that he's been doing. He's been working in education ever since he graduated from Earlham, and I believe he came out in '02. And just his rise to now, he is the principal of an all-male academy who serves predominantly young men of color. Then I start to see some of the interviews he's doing, some of the videos that they're putting out, of the conversations that they're having with these youth. And I, as a grown man, am floored by these young men. Like, I am very inspired and taken back by what these young men are able to accomplish. And these are kids that are coming from some rough places, as well too. But what, I gathered from that conversation was just the intent that Robert went in to this school with, the drive and the purpose that he went into this school with, and the tools and the things that they put in place to help these kids reach success. And it's let me see, it's almost basic, but it's complex at the same time. And so they have a creed. Their mascot is the Lions, and so they call their young men the Young Lions, right? And think about that for a minute, and especially as a Black man, think about being called a lion, being part of a pride, right? I mean, you look at lions, these majestic creatures out there, and I mean, that's who you are, and that's exactly what they instill. I can't talk about it without getting excited. I mean, you see my hands and shoulders moving and all this stuff. Like, it fires me up. I love it. I mean, they have a creed that they recite, that they have the young men recite, and there's a video out there of this young man leading this creed, and the energy that they have. You just see this confidence just exude through these young men, and it's all because of the environment that Robert and his staff have created for these young people. And it's the messages that they send them, these positive messages that they send them over and over and over again, that make these kids believe that they have a shot in life, that believe that they can be successful. And I believe if they can do it in Louisville, Kentucky, we can do it right here in Richmond, Indiana. All we got to do is take the blueprint and apply it to our kids in our institutions right here. And I think that's the magic, is when you can get these young people to start to believe, or anybody for that matter, to believe that they can be successful, to believe that they can have a future, that they can do something different than what they've always seen. I mean, it's pure magic.
Carl, I watched your face when you were talking about the young men being lions, having pride.
Mm-hmm.
Talk about your feelings as a young Black man watching the protests this past summer, listening to the conversations that have taken place surrounding social justice, racial justice, injustice in general, and how you have felt growing up in Indiana as a Black man, to get to where you are, because there are a number of people, and I'm sure you probably had friends reach out, same as I did, same as a number of people did, white friends who said, I don't completely understand what I'm seeing. I never really thought it was that bad.
Mm-hmm.
Talk about what this summer did for you, and do you think the conversation has continued, or have you seen the conversation kind of die off?
Yeah. So man, how I feel and what it's done for me, to me, I think how I feel now is different than how I have felt. Growing up in Indiana, in Muncie, and I've talked to people about this, and like you said, some of my white friends have asked, about my experience, and I tell them, part of it is yeah. I mean, if you were to say you didn't know it was that bad, I'd say, you know what, I didn't either.
Mm-hmm.
The reason is, though, is because I felt like I was in a position where I had to accept it. Because it was commonplace in society. I mean, racism went from being very overt, and you could just call Black people the N-word and do whatever you wanted to them in the streets and nobody cared, to it had to go undercover after the civil rights movement. And so it was done in certain ways where you had teachers, tell you that you weren't good enough. I had a situation in high school, realized, or maybe middle school, where we realized going into high school, you were going to be put on two different tracks. There was a college track and a technical track that you could take in high school, and noticed that the counselors and the school was pushing a lot of kids of color onto that technical track, as if to say we weren't good enough to go to college. We weren't college material. And it took my father going up to the school and demanding and saying, no, my son is going to college, and you're going to put him in every class to get him there in order for me to get to Earlham. But then as well, too, it comes from both sides. And so, growing up in a home and in a family and a culture, because I know this isn't special to me. I know other Black folks that have heard these same messages, that you have to work twice as hard, as a white person to be able to make it. Um, you know, Shucks. I mean, I've been told not to look white people in the eye because it offends them. It could cause conflict, and so you kind of look off. The talk, we now know, more of us know what that is around policing, and if you get pulled over by the police, guaranteed I had that talk. As a young man, my father gave me that and told me, "Yep, you put 10 and 2 on the wheel. You look straight ahead. You tell that officer, yes, sir, no, sir, yes, ma'am, no, ma'am." And you tell that officer everything you about to do before you do it. You don't move a hand before officer, you want my license? My license is the glove box. It's in my wallet. Can I please get it? So on and so forth. I remember the details of these conversations. And so I think growing up in an environment like that, you become almost desensitized and in a sense that this is just the way it is. And maybe even the way it's always been. I think part of it too, when you start to understand the opportunities that you're not afforded, or when you look at the opportunities your family wasn't afforded, it does make you angry. I've been in that place as well too, where I've been angry about situations where I felt like I was kept from things, or wasn't able to do things uh, because I was a Black man, or that people looked at me a certain way. Definitely. I mean, I had experience, you know, uh, in college, that the perception was a Black male football player. I mean, you were aggressive and angry and aggressive towards women was the perception that we had to carry around. And so with that too, here and there was work to be done to overcome those things, right? So again, I was trained to make myself small. I'm 6'1", 300 pounds. But when I walk into a room of a bunch of people that don't look like me, or that are very much fair skinned than me, I make myself look about 5'10", or I feel like I make myself look about 5'10" and maybe 150 pounds, right? I kind of, folks would talk about shucking and jiving. You learn, unfortunately, to do some of those things so that way you're not offensive to people, that you don't scare them and make them fear you, so that way you can get access to the things that you have a right to anyway. I mean, I'm just trying to get what I'm already supposed to have. Like, don't do me any favors, but don't get in my way either. And so, growing from that though, and now being in a position where I am now, and knowing what I know now, uh, I move through life a little bit differently. I'm able to extend a little bit more grace to people than I would have in the past. And I think overcoming, and definitely where I'm at, it's about understanding. And I've learned that in the work that I do, right? And so when I work with these young people, and have worked with them, especially in residential settings, I'm coming in here to try to understand you. I'm not trying to tell you who you are, or tell you what's going on with you. I'm trying to learn. I want you to open up and tell me, help me to understand who you are, where you've come from, what's happened to you, and what you need from me to make this relationship work and make this situation work. And so I look at, honestly, this, our race relations, and the debate about racism in the same way. Um, Over the summer, I've been to the marches that took place here in town. I've reached out to folks that I felt like were on the other side. I was able to have a conversation with some people. Unfortunately, others I wasn't. It just didn't happen. It didn't come together. But I reached out to Trump supporters, which I'm not, but that doesn't matter. But I reached out to folks that were, felt strongly about and supported President Trump, to have a conversation to say, hey, explain to me, how are you feeling? What are you wanting? And I think too, I've learned a lot of us want the same thing. We're on these opposing sides, but we're really screaming about the same thing on each side. We want freedom. We want to be able to live our lives the way we see fit. We want protection as well too. In doing so, and we don't want people to stand in our way and to keep us from having this American dream, the things that are written in our Constitution, and so on and so forth. But to get to that place, I mean, you've got to be willing to sit down and have conversations with people, and to first understand, and then be understood. And so those are some of the things that I've been practicing, definitely since the killing of George Floyd, as well as extending grace to others, because I have been been on the receiving end of a lot of grace over my lifetime. And so it would be wrong of me to not extend that to other people at this point in my life. So
we're down to our last 5.5 or so minutes with this. I consider myself to be one of those older people who used to do it old school, as it were. You're kind of in between where I am and the young people that you're working with. You've got young kids. You're trying to bring them up. Talk a little bit about what you're seeing in society that you think we need to work on to help make this a better place for you, so that you can help make it a better place for your kids. If there were a couple of things that we could try to accomplish in the next 4 to 8 years, we're not even going to say in the next 100 days or in the next 3 months. What are the couple of things that people your age are really looking for? And I ask this because we talk to young professionals sometimes, and our generation keeps saying, we need to open the door, we need to bring people in behind us, that type thing. Do we need to bring you all in behind us, or do we just need to get out of your way?
Both. You need to bring us in, then get out the way.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, because again, I have learning to do. I don't know it all, and I don't pretend to. I need to learn, and I definitely need to learn from the people that are where I'm trying to get, that have the connections, that have the access that I'm trying to get and that I need. But once I'm there, don't feel threatened because I'm there. Don't close the doors. Don't close opportunities because now I've arrived, and somehow you feel threatened, maybe that somebody's going to take your position or somebody's going to take your shine, or something like that. No, we got to move, out of the way, because again, it's not for us. I don't really think, I mean, at this point for me, it's not for me to complete the journey all the way. I move, I push the ball a little bit further. I move things a little bit further, and then I got to get out of the way for that generation coming up behind me to now take it and then run with it even further. I don't know when we arrive and when we achieve the goal, but I don't believe it's going to necessarily end with me. So that helps me to not stand in the way. I think one of the things that I try to do, and especially as a parent and as working with people, I work with parents and with children in both of my positions, is that I know that I don't know it all, and I don't pretend to. I think some of what I got when I was a kid, I felt like, my parents and the old folks was telling me like they knew it all. Like my grandmother was hard, and she'd tell you, you need to do this and this and this. And as if that was the only way to do it, because that's the way she knew. And so again, I think, understanding that I don't know it all. And so what I'm giving you the nuggets, the gems, the tools that I learned. And I'm just giving it to you for you to take and make it your own, and for you to run with it. I think what I need and what others need, again, we do need that access. We need folks reaching back to us. I often say, I don't know what I don't know. And I hate the question when people say, well, what do you need? And I'm like, I have no clue. This is uncharted territory for me, possibly before what I'm doing or what somebody else may be doing. I might be new to this activity or this position. So you need to look at what I'm doing, hear me talk, digest what I'm saying, and then you reach out to me and say, hey, Carl, this is what I can give you. Based upon what I see you doing, based upon what I hear you saying, I got something for you. Here, take this. Let me show you this, that, and the other. And then, I mean, for me personally, I'll pick it up and run with it. I prefer, kind of to learn in that method, but I've had to learn how to adapt to and know how to ask people for what I want. My grandmother did tell me, my father used to tell me that too. Speak up, boy. Hey, you got to tell people, what you want. Ain't no mind readers out here. All that kind of coming back together, that knowledge slapped me in the face. I should have listened way back then. But and lastly, I'll say we have to be purposeful. We have to be intentional in what we do. I'm learning this as a parent with my children. If I want my children to be successful, if I want them to grow up with values and morals, if I want them to stay out of trouble, that's not going to happen by happenstance. That's not going to happen by luck. It's not going to happen for me sitting down watching TV every day and letting them play in their rooms by themselves. I have to take an active role in parenting my kids, in working with them, in training them. And so that means me and my wife, we have to sit down and we have to have some conversations about, what we want to teach them, what we want them to look like. And then, okay, honey, what are the methods that we are going to use? Hey, you know what? I'm not going to watch TV tonight. I'm not going to watch TV when I come home. I'm not going to go straight to bed. I'm going to sit up with the kids. We're going to read a book. We're going to play with blocks. I'm going to expose them to things because I want them to have every opportunity to be able to look at this vast world and be able to pick and say, yep, I want that. I want that. I'll take a little bit of this. But if I, as the parent, don't provide those opportunities for them, how else are they going to know? Or I run the risk of letting them be trained by someone out there that doesn't have their best interest in mind. And now I've got a young person who's now, in trouble with the law, doing things that I don't want them doing or being taken advantage of by somebody else because I didn't take the time to be intentional in my parenting. I think the same thing works as we're talking about mentor in organizational type relationships. Again, if you say as whoever you are in this community, as a leader, as a business owner, as somebody who has, and you want to give back to somebody else, then don't let that just be lip service. Like, be purposeful about what you want to do. Like, if you want, in this age too, now we're hearing people talk more about, oh, we want people of color. Well, we need Black people at the table. Well, you're going to have to go get them because you're not going to be able to sit in the same spot you always sat and expect Black people to come to you because that door's been locked, bolted, closed, burned down for so long. And we knew we didn't have access. We ain't even going to dare knock on it. So if you want us now at the table, you're going to have to get up, go get in your car, go drive down, knock on the door, grab them by the wrist and say, hey, it's safe. Come on with me. And so, we have to be purposeful, intentional in what we're doing. We don't know it all. And we got to provide that access.
Carl Rhinehart, futureachievers.org. Check them out. Helping our youth. I appreciate the time.
Thank you, sir.